Hi there, my lovely friends. How are we doing today? Thanks to a couple of comments I received on a recent video, today we're going to be talking about subplots, why they're a good idea, and a few ways to incorporate them into your outlining and writing process. Now, firstly, I should probably explain what subplots are. And I thought the easiest way to explain it is that your story will, of course, have a plot. And so if we consider your plot as being the main meat of your meal, then your subplots are the side dishes and the salads and the dressing and the things you have on the side that turns a piece of meat into a meal. And that's what subplots do. They add complexity, they add color, they add depth to your existing plots. And I'm going to explain a few reasons why they're a good idea. And this can work across a multitude of genres. For a start, subplots add emotional depth. Your main plot can just be you want to solve a murder or find a fated mate or anything else like that. You have that small little tagline that just describes your book, the main plot. But the subplot, excuse me, is where we see the character's inner life. So, for example, maybe you've got like in my case, I write paranormal. So I'd say like a wolf shifter detective is trying to solve a case, and that is the main plot. But he might also be struggling with trusting somebody or trusting anyone after losing a former partner, perhaps, which is a very common subplot. The emotional thread is something that gives readers something deeper to connect to. Without that subplot, the story can just feel quite flat and mechanical. So looking deeper into your character, your main character, by adding a subplot. And they can also be used to reveal character growth. Your external story might be about stopping that villain, but the subplot might be about learning to ask for help, which I'm sure a lot of our heroes have issues with. By the end of it, the resolution of the subplot proves that the character has changed, and that makes the main plot victory feel stronger somehow. Another reason that people would use subplots is that they create a contrast and balance. I was reading a friend's book a while ago, and it was just action after action after action after action. Boom, 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 boom. And I did say to my friend, I said, I couldn't breathe. By the time I got to like the third action scene at roughly a third of the way in the book, I was running out of breath and feeling tired, and I had no idea that I got the impression that the main character was probably feeling the same way. If you have a main plot that's very intense and dark, or it's particularly high stakes, then having a lighter subplot gives your reader breathing room. Think of comic relief characters or a quirky side romance. I mentioned in a recent video I did about secondary characters where I had Sparky the Raven, offering inappropriate comments at exactly the wrong time. It's that balance that improves the pacing of your story and gives your readers a bit of breathing room. Now, another reason why subplots are important is because they do increase reader investment, that investment into your story and into your characters. Different readers will come to your book and looking to connect to different things. Some readers just love the action and they're just bang, 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 bang all the time. Others are looking for that romance. It might be a slow burn. It might be a case of one of our heroes who absolutely has no idea that somebody else is actually, quietly lusting after them. There are other readers that'll really enjoy a friendship arc, but your subplots allow you to widen the emotional net of your story without detracting from the main plot. And that again is really important. A fifth reason is that they can strengthen themes. If your story theme, for example, is belonging, you can explore that in different ways. So in your main plot, for me, for example, my hero finds a mate. That's a main plot, although they've usually got something else they've got to deal with as well. But then a secondary plot could be, a subplot might be where a secondary character reconnects with an estranged sibling, or it might be, there's a whole range of different subplots that relate to the secondary characters, which is really useful, as you will see shortly. A subplot can also raise the stakes. There can come a time where subplots give villains, the bad guys in your book, more ways to hurt your hero. And while that sounds cruel, it can actually make for a more complex story. The subplot becomes the leverage. Like if your hero fails in the main plot, what happens to the friend in the subplot? What might happen to a business they run together, or a club, or the town, or whatever else? A subplot gives the villains something else to target, but it also gives the readers a way to see more beyond the implications of the hero's actions. So not sure that came out as clear as I intended, but never mind. Now, I've already mentioned about pacing, because the main plot needs a pause, especially if there's a lot of action going on in your story, but also if there's been something traumatic has happened, or your hero is injured, or something else has happened. They've had a breakup or whatever else. You can switch to the subplot scene then. And this is where I've brought it up in videos of mine before. If I think of it, I'll link it, about preventing saggy middles. This is a huge deal because we all get saggy middles. So bringing in a subplot helps you get over that hump and helps you sort of like move on towards the main climax, the climax scenes you're actually looking to get to. Now, for me, as somebody who's a serial series writer, they do build series potential as well. If your secondary character's arc in book 1 can become the main plot arc in book 2, this works for a number of reasons, namely that you've already done the groundwork and readers are already invested. It helps makes your world feel alive. Those of you among you who have been published before will know that if you get those emails at the end of a particularly good story and somebody says, when is such and such going to get their book? Then you know it's worked. That's what you've done. So, yeah, that's just something else to keep in mind there. But with the thing is too, is without the subplots, secondary characters are basically just like furniture. If you have subplots, your secondary characters have agency in the story. And this helps create tension in your book without inventing new villains, particularly if your particular secondary character has their own goals that might clash with the goals of your protagonist. It's an easy way of creating a bit more tension without introducing even more issues. And I think finally, one of the reasons why subplots are so important is that they make a story feel real. It's not just linear. And we all know that real life doesn't happen on a single straight line. We can fall in love while dealing with work stress. We can solve problems while still managing family drama. Subplots mimic that layered experience, which helps make your fiction feel more authentic, even if you're like me and you write paranormal stories. Now, of course, it's all very well telling you that yes, subplots are a good idea and yes, they can do all these things, but it also needs to be practical. I do know that a lot of my viewers like to plot out their stories. So I had to do a bit of thinking about this one because, pantsers, please keep listening anyway, because I do appreciate the watch time. But yes, like for me, I don't plot my stories. They just come. So, but the thing is if you are wanting to plot your story out, then before you even start outlining, you want to decide what the purpose is of your subplot, because it needs to have a purpose. It can't just be a random act in the middle of the book. So does the subplot develop your character? Does it help support a theme? Does it create any tension? Does it help set up a future book? If it doesn't have at least one purpose, it's just going to be clutter. It's going to be fluff and readers are going to get peed off about it. For newer writers especially, I would suggest you've got one. If you're only writing a shorter books, then only have one subplot. If you're writing something a bit longer, maybe one or two. But you don't need 5 or more just to keep a story going. You're just going to confuse your readers. So think of 1 or 2 appropriate subplots before you start outlining. Now, the second step then is you've got to tie your subplots to your story beats. So I'm going to use the example of Save the Cat because that was the only book I had on plotting. And so I do use it quite often to talk about these things. But so when you're doing the setup of your story, you're going to introduce your subplot then. When you're at the fun and games section, you're letting it develop. By the time you've got to the midpoint, you can escalate your subplot at the same time as your main plot. And when your bad guys start closing in, you can let your subplot complicate the main plot. So that when you get to the all is lost section, the subplot seems to have been lost as well. And then you'll have the finale where it'll be resolved. Or if you're writing a series, and I always say you should, you could leave the threads of your subplot unresolved to carry on into the next book. Now, one of the most powerful subplots are those that affect decisions. For example, if the hero in your story is trying to protect someone in a subplot, that protection could cause them to make a reckless choice in the main plot. So now your threads of your subplot and your main plot are actually woven together. You want to try and avoid isolating your subplots. If you've written a subplot and it could actually be taken out of your story and it does nothing at all to the main plot, then yeah, it shouldn't be in there. It shouldn't be in there. You want your subplot to impact your main plot in some way. It doesn't have to be a big way, but it does have to be there so that if it was removed, it would change the story. And this is where some people also don't quite get it, is that with the subplot, they need their own mini arc as well. So they need a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's sort of like a short story running parallel with your main story, but it does still need that resolution, even if that resolution is implied as something that's going to happen in the next book. Now, one of the ways that you can do it, depending on how you write your outline, but you could have things when you're outlining your chapters, you could mark them like M for main plot scene, and then like S1 for subplot scenes, and S2 if you're writing a longer book and you've got 2 subplots. And if you map it out like that, then you'll be able to quickly see if you've forgotten about one of your threads for like 10 chapters, then your reader's going to think that it was dropped, and you probably should drop it because it's clearly not serving a purpose. Another tip I would offer here is don't introduce a new subplot too late in the story. Don't think to yourself, bum, 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 you're driving along, you're riding along, and then you get, oh, shoot, I haven't added a subplot, quick, and you just chuck something in. Don't do that. If your subplot matters, seed it early, even if it's just a tiny little thing. Go back and add a single line somewhere in the first couple of chapters that leads to what your subplot that you're introducing later in the story. But honestly, any subplot introduced at, say, the 75% mark or something like that, it feels like a distraction and you don't need it. Now, I've already talked about the resolution of it. Like, you either need to resolve it clearly or you need to leave it open in such a way that feels deliberate. You do not want to be seeing in your reviews after your book comes out, whatever happened to such and such? Whatever happened to this, that, or the other? I really enjoyed this story, but we never did find out about X, Y, Z. You don't want that. So if you're going to have a subplot and if you're going to leave it as a way to go into a main plot point in the next book in your series, you need to indicate that in some way. You need to give it a partial resolution so that your readers know you haven't forgotten it, it is still coming. But basically, the key things to remember here is that if you remove a subplot and nothing changes in your main story, then your subplot wasn't doing the work. It wasn't doing enough. You don't need it. A good subplot will create pressure. It can force choices. It can reveal flaws, particularly in your heroes. It will strengthen your theme, and it should affect the ending. Now, the thing is you don't have to design brilliantly layered subplots from day one. If you're like me, and I think I have quite a few viewers who are the same, if you're just writing, if you're pantsers, you will find quite often that even if you've outlined your main plot and then you're into the writing phase, quite often you will find these little subplots will crop up. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not chaos. That's your story adapting to what you are writing. Remember, you can always strengthen and shape those subplots when you get to the revision factor side of things. But so what do you think? Do you use subplots? Do you like reading subplots? Do you think that subplots should just happen naturally, or do you plan for them? I'd really love to hear about that in the comments down below. I have always found, because I'm a pantser, my subplots tend to, I sort of see them like a little diversion, go over here, my story is going this way. And then all of a sudden something happens and we go over here and we go and do this over here, or suddenly something will happen. And I'll think, oh, and if it's something that you can resolve quickly, but it does have a reason for being in the story. And I can't emphasize that enough. If you can remove your subplot and it has made no difference to the story at all, then it shouldn't have been in there in the first place. So those are my thoughts on that. But I would love to hear yours. Now, for those of you who don't know, I do long form contents on Mondays and Thursdays. I also do reading of my work on Saturdays. because I am trying to increase the watch time of my channel in the hopes of getting back onto the partner program again one day. But I am, in the meantime, I am simply enjoying making these videos. So if you have ideas or questions or anything else about your writing journey, publishing, marketing, or anything else, I am a self-published author. That is where my experience is. So just saying that for context. But drop your questions down below and I'd be more than happy to help out where I can. I do answer every comment, but if it's going to take too long, I might write and just say, oh, thank you so much for this. This is actually a really good video idea. And, and then I will make a video about it at a later stage. I do do my content. So I do 3 or 4 videos in a week on a weekend, because like now I'm in the middle of writing a book and I'm actually really invested in it. But I sort of looked at my YouTube channel and thought, oh no, okay, I got to get a few videos done to try and get ahead so that then I can sit there and do my writing too. But anyway, you don't need to know about that. You just need to keep going. As I say, questions are welcome. Please hit the like button if I've helped you at all. The subscribe is also welcome as well. Welcome as well. That's, yeah, not good, is it? But above all, have an awesome day and please keep writing. And until next time, we will see you then. Bye.